When people talk about the best Western animation series, the usual suspects will appear. Avatar the Last Airbender, Gravity Falls, Rick and Morty, Samurai Jack, etc., etc., etc. All these are great shows, and Avatar the Last Airbender is personally my favorite show of all time across all media. At the end of the day, all of these series, and a lot that I didn't just mention, are well renowned because they blend great characters with compelling stories and often riveting action. If I were to ask anyone who cares about animated shows, I'll bet most people have seen or heard of all these series I just mentioned. In fact, I'd bet there are a lot of people out there who have never even seen some of these shows but would instantly recognize them. But there's one show out there that I want to highlight. Not because it's the greatest animated show of all time, but because it is one of the most unique and it takes a full advantage of the medium of animation. I'm talking about Infinity Train, a show which was inexplicably canceled after 4 seasons and which was effectively deleted from all streaming services, and I'll talk about that more a bit later. Shows like Avatar or Gravity Falls are great. As I said, Atla is one of my favorite shows of all time, but Infinity Train is the show which I think needs to be talked about more. Everyone knows about how Gravity Falls and Avatar are really, really, really amazing. Everyone knows about how amazing Zuko's character arc is or how special of an antagonist Bill Cipher is. No one knows about how Infinity Train has one of the best representations of a divorce from the perspective of a kid enduring it. No one knows about how Infinity Train has a deeply moving message about the nature of friendship. No one talks about how grief and loss are beautifully shown in multiple characters throughout what is ostensibly a kid's show. To set the picture, Infinity Train is an anthology series. Each season focuses on a different main character, with the one constant being the setting, which, while it changes each episode, is the titular Infinity Train. Each car on this infinite train is an entire world, and because the train is infinite, each car holds infinite possibilities. One episode could be a car ruled by a corgi, the next could be a bunch of mute crystal people, or some could just be filled with a bunch of ducks. People board the train when they experience some traumatic event in their lives. I say board because it really isn't a choice for the person. The train just opens up a wormhole and sucks people in, but I digress. Once on board, passengers are assigned a glowing green number on their hand. Without delving into it too much, the number holds the key to them getting off the train. Each episode will generally follow the protagonist and friends through a car where the goal is to get from the entrance to the exit. A relatively simple premise which could have easily devolved into a generic pile of mind-numbing garbage. But it doesn't do that. Each episode is 15 minutes long, meaning the stories for each car have to be introduced and wrapped up fairly quickly. So it's best to look at each season rather than specific episodes. Now, don't get me wrong, individual episodes can be absolutely fantastic, but there are some episodes which really do feel like filler. For instance, J.K. Simmons plays a giant pig baby at one point, so take that for what you will. Overall, though, each season deals with a particular issue or theme, which is the reason for the season's protagonist being on the train in the first place. And the issues which get tackled aren't your everyday run-of-the-mill kids topics. Season 1 focuses on Tulip Olsen, a 12-year-old girl struggling with the fallout from her parents' divorce. Season 4 looks at how time changes the natures of friendships and what that means as people grow older. Season 2 examines how society values some people less than others simply for being themselves. And Season 3 follows the trend of Legend of Korra and Avatar the Last Airbender by being the best season in the series. In the words of the show's creator, it's all for kids. Needless to say, these are not your typical cartoon fare for Saturday mornings. But you can't deliver these messages if you don't have strong characters or animation. Thankfully, though, this show has them both in spades. I'll start with the general animation. This isn't a show which is as stylized as something like Samurai Jack or Spider-Verse, but it also isn't the generic stick figure style or corporate animation which Disney and Netflix always seem to fall for. Each car is visually distinct and makes excellent use of its premise. Why not have a car which is a literal family tree? Why not have a car just filled with tiny wizards? All these ideas are brought to life with backgrounds which range from vibrant and open to dark and moody. And while the characters are all very much alive, the backgrounds tend to remind me of something like a canvas painting, and I mean that in the best way possible. Now, while the show looks good, it wouldn't be worth a video if it didn't have great characters. Without really delving into the plots or arcs of any individual character, you'll be hard-pressed to deliver as much development in such a short amount of time. Just remember, each of these episodes is 15 minutes long. A season is 10 episodes. In 150 minutes, the writers need to introduce to the audience these characters, show what motivates them and drives them, set up conflicts, and resolve those conflicts all in the same amount of time as 5 episodes for most cartoons. On top of that, those other cartoons most likely aren't handling topics as heavy as this show. Characters who start out as self-seeking or straight-up sadistic evolve into people who care for the lives of the creatures who, in the grand scheme of things, don't really matter. There are moments where our protagonists are able to play their strengths and save the day, and then minutes later are stripped down to their most vulnerable self. It's a roller coaster of emotions which you really aren't likely to get in a lot of other shows. In addition to all the great character work and animation, though, was a thin thread of backstory to the train itself. 4 seasons of this show allowed for the creators to slowly introduce lore and ideas about the train which were always waiting to be explored. Indeed, future seasons and a movie were supposed to explore the lore and history in greater detail. There's even a character who's essentially being set up as the audience guide through all of this during the first 4 seasons. But alas, as with most good shows, it was canceled. In fact, half the reason I am making this video in the first place is because of the rather insane story of the show's production run and its ultimate cancellation. The original pilot for Infinity Train debuted way back in 2016. Gravity Falls was just finishing up, the sequel trilogy wasn't total garbage at that point, and Marvel was entering its peak. The pilot did really well on Cartoon Network's YouTube channel and quickly garnered millions of views. After the pilot, people really wanted this show to get greenlit and made, so much so that new pilots and clips on Cartoon Network would get accosted by hordes of fans demanding that Infinity Train be made instead. Cartoon Network eventually listened, and in August of 2019, Season 1 came out. This was followed by Season 2 shortly after in the start of 2020, and then the show migrated to HBO for Season 3 and 4, which came out in August 2020 and April 2021 respectively. Every single season of Infinity Train has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't care about that metric, go look at IMDb. It's really highly rated there too. And demand was incredibly high every time a new season premiered. So naturally, the show somehow didn't get high enough viewership and was canceled. Feels bad, Owl House. But the most bizarre aspect of this whole ordeal is how the show was announced to be pulled from HBO Max 2 days before it was gone. Cartoon Network proceeded to remove all content related to Infinity Train from every single platform. Everything from the pilot to the soundtrack to posts on Twitter were simultaneously deleted. Infinity Train got canceled harder than a Winnie the Pooh post in China. Thankfully, the show's fans reinstated much of the deleted content, but unfortunately, the only way to watch this show is to either pirate it or buy it from Apple TV or Amazon. But hey, at least we got it canceled so HBO could go and, make something better, right? Right? At the end of the day, this show is something truly special. It has moments for kids to laugh at and has moments to make adults cry. It has truly a unique animation style and soundtrack, which I didn't really mention it, but thinking back, the soundtrack really does add to the atmosphere of the show. Synth music was definitely the right choice for this series. It's a show which is incomplete and simply begging to be finished. If someone like Amazon or Netflix ever does pick it up, this could easily become just as big of a hit as Avatar was when it got put back on Netflix. I want people to give this show some love since it's a show where there is clearly passion and talent devoted to producing it. Who knows, someone might see this and discover this amazing show, or maybe someone will see this and just add one more voice to the fans who want the show to come back. Regardless, I want shows like this to continue to be made, and the only way to do that is to support projects like this when they come out. Thanks for listening to me ramble about my favorite forgotten series.